Hello and welcome to Coffee and a Conversation with Capital News. I'm Jacqueline Gelano and I'm joined here today with Gavin Dew, who's running for MLA in the Kelowna mission riding with the Conservatives. Gavin, before we begin today, I do have the most pressing issue that all of our voters want to hear about. How do you take your coffee?
I take my coffee black, I take it in large quantities, and I take it often.
Perfect, we can arrange that. Thank you so much. Excellent. And so now, Gavin, how are your first few sips of your nice black coffee tasting?
I'd say this is great. Off camera we were talking about, I said I take my coffee black and I wasn't lying, but the one exception is I put milk in coffee if it's bad. This is good, there's nothing in it.
Nothing that needs to be added.
Yes, it's great.
Perfect. Well, we want to know today what you're going to be adding to the political atmosphere here in Kelowna. So you were recently added here to the Conservative tent. I want to know what motivated you to run in this election.
Yeah, you bet. So, at a macro level, my involvement in politics has always been about really two things. One is business and the economy, and the other is people and families. Mm-hmm. Right? I come from the business community. I've been involved in a lot of complex major projects in BC and across Canada. I've seen the challenges that we have in Canada, both for small businesses trying to get started up, but also for major projects trying to get built on the land base. Mm-hmm. And that worries me because I know that if we have a strong economy, we can afford to pay for the things we all want, the services, the things like that help to support people and families. Mm-hmm. So that's what gets me motivated at a high level. In this moment right now, in this election, when I got pulled in, which was in August, what I saw was a really rapidly changing political environment in BC, where we'd gone through a couple of years of change, and the Free Enterprise Coalition, the economic coalition, was being reconsolidated under the Conservative banner. Mm-hmm. And when I was approached by the Conservatives, what I said was, guys, if we're going to form a government, it's crucial that we can reach the middle of the road business audience, the Chamber of Commerce voters, the red-blue switchers, the people that are really concerned with economic issues. We need to reach those folks. We need to make sure that we're talking to people all across the broad tent of our political coalition, and we need to make sure that we're obviously demonstrably a government in waiting. And I think what we've seen over the last couple of months is we've really been able to demonstrate that with a lot of really, really solid policy that's been coming out, a lot of new great candidates that have come on board. And I think now we're in an election where the choice is really clear. We've got chaos and decline under the NDP. Things are not going well. We've had 5 straight years where we've had 0% private sector job growth. We've got a $9 billion deficit. We've got a healthcare system in disarray. We've got chaos and addiction and people facing real challenges on the streets of our neighborhoods. And we can either have more of that or we can have common sense change with the Conservatives.
Right, and so I think that's what a lot of people want to know is we hear about this common sense change. What are you going to bring to the ledge in Victoria? What kind of issues are facing Kelowna Mission, and how are you going to address those?
Yeah. So when I'm knocking on doors, which I've done a lot of, you hear a lot of the same themes coming from people. So you hear the big themes that are resonating all across the province, right? You hear that our economy is in trouble. You hear that healthcare is in trouble. You hear all of those issues. Cost of living is a major challenge. And when I knock on doors in Kelowna Mission, I hear those issues from everyone, but I also hear about issues like tourism. We've had a 50% year-over-year decline in tourism here, and that is just hammering our wine industry. Wine's a $3.75 billion industry in BC, and obviously the Okanagan is a huge part of that. It's a backbone industry for us. There are 70 wineries for sale right now. People are really hurting in that sector. Some of that is obviously the effect of the big cold snap. Some of that is other broader issues, but a big piece of it is that tourism has been absolutely cratered. And part of that is that the NDP took this shotgun approach to short-term rentals that helped to kill the tourism market, when what was needed was a scalpel to get it right and to make sure we were getting balanced policies on that front. So I hear about that frequently. KGH is in my riding, so whether it's from patients or whether it's from medical professionals, I've heard a lot of issues and a lot of concerns about the healthcare system, and definitely issues around wildfires continue to be front of mind. You know, with last year's wildfire season, I think people are really concerned. They want to make sure that we're taking action on the environment and in particular taking action around wildfires.
So short-term rentals has been a hot button topic, but so has affordable housing. How would you balance those two needs of giving residents affordable housing, but giving tourists somewhere to stay?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the real, you got to look at the numbers. And from what I have seen, there is basically almost zero evidence that the short-term rental policies the NDP has imposed have led to an improvement in housing affordability here in Kelowna. So when you look at the evidence, it hasn't been working. I think what they wanted to do is they wanted to be seen to act. And they got so committed to the idea of their policy that they weren't really getting into what was or wasn't working about their policy. They ignored the input from the city of Kelowna and just rammed through their approach. So for example, you had people, retirees who invested their retirement savings in buying units designed for short-term rental in zones for short-term rental. And even in spite of the city's feedback, the province came along and basically said, hey, just because you made that investment when the rules were the rules, it doesn't matter. We're going to rip that out from under you. So, I mean, that, for a lot of folks you talk to for whom that was their retirement savings, that's not how the rule of law is supposed to work. That's not how investment is supposed to work. And what a lot of people don't necessarily understand is a huge amount of the rental housing that gets built in Canada, the capital actually comes from retail investors, and that means retirees and families. So if you're shocking those people and saying, hey, your investments, you can't rely on what the rules are, you're actually going to push that capital out of investing in other rental, whether it be long-term or short-term, in the future. So I think what, unfortunately, this government just doesn't understand is they don't get the unintended consequences of the policies they make, which seem to be driven more by ideology than by evidence or stakeholder consultation or common sense.
So that's something that's really been impacting a lot of people, specifically here in Kelowna. But how would you tackle the issue of affordable housing in a city like this that's also committed to not expanding, geographically? We don't want city sprawl. How are you going to tackle the issue of affordable housing in Kelowna Mission?
Absolutely. I mean, the way that you address affordability is fundamentally a matter of supply and demand. Right? One of the big things people don't necessarily know about affordability or don't understand is that there's price and there's affordability. And affordability is a function of the relationship between the price of housing and people's incomes. So you've got to take a full spectrum approach to housing affordability. If we can make sure that people are actually succeeding and getting better paid jobs, they have more ability to afford housing, right? We have a crisis in British Columbia of affordability, which some of it is housing supply, some of it is housing price, some of it is actually stagnant wages and a declining standard of living. We've actually had, across Canada, we've had flatline per capita GDP for 20 years, and it's been declining for the last few years. So we actually are losing standard of living. And we actually, I mentioned previously that we've had 0% private sector job growth over the last 5 years. Well, government's grown by 1/3 in that time. So that means everybody is paying more and more. We've had 32 tax hikes in the last 7 years. People's ability to afford to live, people's ability to afford housing is also affected when they're paying more and more in taxes. And you tell me if you're getting better services from government over the last 7 years. So that's squeezing people's wallets in terms of their ability to afford housing. We obviously also need to make sure we build housing. Doing that requires infrastructure funding, which is why we've committed $1 billion a year to supporting infrastructure for municipalities in order to enable that housing to get built.
So we've talked about a lot of the issues facing our community, but I want to know what your favorite thing to do in your riding in the fall season is. What do you love about Kelowna Mission, and why do you want to spend the next 4 years representing that riding?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things to do, look, this is a coffee themed show, so I'm going to be honest. I have mixed views about pumpkin spice.
That's okay. We like it.
I'm not a big fan of the sickly sweet pumpkin spice latte from Starbucks. I'm sorry to anyone who is, but what I do like is the natural pumpkin paste or organically made pumpkin spice latte from the Milk Shed. So the Milk Shed is my favorite coffee shop that we go to all the time. And whether it's in the summer or in the fall, one of the things we love to do is we go down there, we get coffee, my kids who are 6 and 3 get hot chocolate, and we go for a walk on the Bellevue Creek Greenway back behind there. So that's like one of our favorite weekend activities to do in the riding.
Oh, well, that's excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you for informing our viewers. I really appreciate you having you come down.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks.